Why do people want to get married? Think about how you might answer that question. Think about how married people that you know might answer that question. Now let me ask you another one. Why do you think gay people want to get married? Has your answer changed? Hopefully not, because I think if you ask this question, people are going to give you similar answers. They get married for love. They get married to make a commitment. They get married to start a family. And regardless of sexual orientation, those answers stay the same. Of course, there are legal benefits to civil marriage, and we'll talk about those in a little bit, but I don't know of anybody who says, we're getting married so we can file a joint tax return. I mean, I know that's not why I want to get married. It's really about love. According to your audience surveys, most of you indicated that you had a gay friend or family member, which means that even as a heterosexual person in Minnesota, this upcoming vote on the marriage amendment affects you because it impacts people in your life that you care about. Minnesota law currently prohibits same-sex marriage already, which means that even if this amendment fails, same-sex marriage still cannot occur in the state of Minnesota. What it would mean, though, is that this conversation could continue to happen. Minnesota United for All Families is an organization that formed in response to the marriage amendment. They're the largest grassroots organization in Minnesota's history, according to their website, mnunited.org. And their mission is simple. They want to prevent Minnesota from becoming the 32nd state to write discrimination into the Constitution, and instead become the first state to stand up against an amendment limiting the freedom to marry. So today we're going to talk about the need here in Minnesota and why it's important to vote no and who it affects. We'll talk about ways that you can get involved, and then we'll go through some of the consequences of whether it passes or fails. So first, let's talk a little bit about the need and how this affects people living in Minnesota. As of today, there are fewer than 100 days until the November election. So we have a very small amount of time, and the Rochester Minnesotans United for All Families office is in need of dozens of volunteers to spread the word here and get this message out. For my volunteering, I actually gave a speech on marriage equality and why it matters to me at a Minnesotans United fundraiser. In addition, I went to their office and I did some data entry and some office work, and I created some training materials for them to utilize until the election occurs. Minnesotan United is interesting, and they had a really unique opportunity because they had the chance to learn from these 31 states who have had similar campaigns and fail. They got to analyze their mistakes and learn what works and what doesn't. And what they found was that personal conversations and personal contact is what works. It's all about the stories. 67% of Minnesotans who have gay friends, colleagues, neighbors will actually vote no if they have a conversation about marriage equality and why it's important for everyone. And if those conversations don't occur, then they assume that marriage equality doesn't matter. And that's a big mistake that some of these other campaigns in other states have made. And so Minnesotans United knows this. But those conversations take people, and they take time. I spoke to Gail Julius, who is an organizer here at the Rochester office, and she let me know that there are about 10 volunteers who come into the office each week to phone bank and do door knocking and have these conversations. And in reality, they need about 20 to 30 people to come in each week. So there's a huge gap and a really large need there to fill those spaces. Again, Minnesota has this unique opportunity to shift the momentum, not just in our state, but across the country. Currently, there are 41 states that ban gay marriage. 31 have done it through state constitutional amendments. 31 states have had these amendments. And this is according to an article by Faith Karimi from CNN.com on May 9th, 2012. So 31 states have already lost this battle. Every time it's gone to public vote, this has been the outcome. So we're led to believe then that public opinion does not support same-sex marriage, right? Wrong. Actually, recent Gallup polls have shown that about 50% of the population across the U.S. actually supports same-sex marriage, while only about 45% opposes it. And if we look at these trends, support continues to increase and opposition continues to decrease. And this trend will continue. And this figure actually comes from a New York Times article on May 9th, 2012. So this is a very recent figure here. So if we're looking at this, and support is in our favor, why do we keep losing these battles? I asked Denise Robertson, who is the regional organizing director for Southern Minnesota for Minnesotans United, and I asked her this question: if support is in our favor, why do we keep losing these? Well, the answer is simple. The conversations weren't happening. It wasn't being personalized, and now we have the opportunity to do that. And really, it's about who goes to the polls that day. It's a snapshot. And so not only do we want to have these conversations, but we want to encourage people to get out and actually vote. I mean, that's crucial. We have one chance on one day to do this. So who exactly is affected here? According to the 2010 census, there are about 13,700 same-sex couples in Minnesota, and that's about 1% of couples statewide. This is from a Star Tribune article on July 14th, 2011. We're talking about 27,000 Minnesotans who are affected by these laws and will be affected by this amendment. Currently, DOMA, which is the Defense of Marriage Act, prevents over 1,100 federal marriage benefits to same-sex couples. This is from CNN.com on May 12th, 2012. Now, I don't want to confuse anybody. If this amendment passes, even if gay marriage becomes legal in Minnesota, that won't change until the federal government intervenes. However, in Minnesota alone, there are 515 state benefits that are withheld from same-sex couples. And this is according to Project 515, who's another organization that has compiled all of these statistics in support of marriage equality. 515 state benefits. Let's see what that looks like. For example, the spouse of a patient is the first person that a physician consults if a patient cannot consent to treatment, unless you're a same-sex partner. Medical data regarding a deceased person is protected but released to a spouse, unless you're a same-sex partner. The surviving spouse of a law enforcement officer killed in the line of duty is eligible to receive $100,000, unless you're a same-sex partner. Priority for custody of a child is given to a relative over a, quote, important friend, even if that important friend is a same-sex partner who has co-parented that child since birth. 515 state laws that are currently withheld from same-sex couples. If this marriage amendment passes, then this continues, and the conversation effectively ends. If you think back to the graphic I showed you about opposition and support, and we see that the trend is in strong favor of same-sex marriage, this takes the decision away from future generations. They will not get a say because we've done it through a vote and we've put it in the state constitution, and that's a difficult thing to change. But the good news is that we do still have time, and there are several ways to get involved, even if your time is really limited, but you support marriage equality. The simple solution, what can you do? You can vote no. And encourage others to do the same. This is really the important message here. Doing so will make Minnesota the very first state to do this, and make us a leader and put us on the right side of history here. And this momentum will lead to change, not just in Minnesota, but across the country. We might be the first state to vote against such an amendment, but we won't be the last. This seems like a really large undertaking, but you actually do have some power here. There's a lot of things that you can do. First of all, you can go to the website, MNUnited.org, and you can pledge to vote no. And all it is filling out a form saying, I will vote no in November. If you're too young to vote, you can talk to voters that you know about marriage equality and why it matters. If you're inclined to get involved, Gail, the organizer here in Rochester, let me know that there are lots of ways you can do that. You can participate in these conversation drives. And if door knocking and phone banking isn't quite your thing, you can participate in what's called a Let Your Friends Know training, where they actually talk to you and teach you how to have these conversations. You can talk about marriage equality and why it matters to you. Or you can visit the local Rochester office, which is right next to Ye Olde Butcher Shop, and you can say, hey, what can I do to get involved? And as I mentioned, we only get one chance to do this and to get it right, and time is running out here. If these thousands of conversations are had, we have the opportunity to change thousands of hearts and minds. And if that happens, we can be number one, and be the first state to do this. That's really huge. This would be incredibly affirming to LGBT citizens here in Minnesota, and we get to be this leader and send a clear picture to our legislators about what's important, equality, and treating people fairly. Or we can be number 32. We can be the 32nd state to pass such a constitutional amendment. And what sort of message does this send to our LGBT community members and to our LGBT youth living here in Minnesota? It sends this message that you're not welcome here, and we don't value you, and you're not the same. In conclusion, the most important thing you can do is to vote no on November 6th and encourage other people and talk to other people to do the same. If you're inclined to volunteer, if this is an issue that's important to you, you can visit the Rochester Minnesotan United office and get involved. And there are lots of things you can do, even if you only have a little bit of time. But remember, if you have no time, vote no. So think back to that question I asked you at the beginning. Why do people get married? And the answer is really simple. People get married for love, and love is love.